Howdy folks and welcome. Today we embark on an epic journey through Azeroth as we play through the whole campaign of WarCraft 3 Reforged, including the Frozen Throne. We'll be using the game's mechanics, visual direction, auditory soundscape, and of course the main story as details on how WarCraft 3 is still one of the best RTS campaigns to this day, and what makes the space fantasy soap opera such a classic. And I truly mean classic because you might have groaned at the fact that this will be the reforged version of the game. Luckily and somewhat ironically, Reforged doesn't change much for the overall package. There are some minor tweaks aesthetically that come up, adding to the universe, or small moments changed to fit into the modern day WoW lore, yet for the most part, the game feels unchanged. The problem is that I can't talk about Reforged without bringing up the slew of problems that happened at launch, and many of those persist to this day. For the small things Reforged got right, a cleaner UI, modern texture models, or widescreen support, those pale in comparison to the numerous broken promises that Blizzard made, each having their own special flair for tarnishing the game and the studio's reputation. Let's start with Blizzard taking away the classic client from Battle.net, making it a laborious task to gain access to the original launcher. Without researching how to gain access to your CD key in the original launcher, some might assume it was gone and would gravitate to the newer version. On release, Reforged had many bugs involving crashing, and some optimization issues that would make Monster Hunter shiver. When players had enough and requested a refund, billion-dollar Blizzard denied them their $30 back. Add on to this Blizzard's implementation of a policy where custom map creators had to sign over their creations instantly when published, eroding innovation and trust within the community. Reforged was a circus show. And that's the power of and. And that's not the lens we're going to be viewing this game today. As I said before, we'll be talking about the elements of the main campaign that work in tandem with other mechanics or direction, making this universe one of the most successful in gaming's history. Now, the description of this story being a soap opera is not intended to be derogatory. I won't be singing the praises of most of the dialogue or character development, but I won't be bashing certain lines because of blandness or what have you either. That's not to say there isn't character progression, but it's not really the focal point. Interestingly, the story and how it's developed throughout the game feels more like an epic tale akin to the Iliad or Odyssey, spanning many lands and encounters, each bringing their own window into the world. And that's the beauty of this game. Even if you know how the end plays out, the journey is well worth it. And it's a long one, so let's get started.
We never paid any heed to the ancient prophecies. Like fools, we clung to the old hatreds and fought as we had for generations.
WarCraft 3 starts out with two cinematics, beautifully animated from their in-house department. Even though Blizzard promised redone cinematics, which did not come to fruition, there was still a great amount of detail here, and they absolutely hold up to this day. These cinematics start the story in more ways than one, providing the iconic Vendetta man vs. Orc battle at first, then having this trope set on its side by some unknown demonic force invading. We have some prophecies being talked about in the background, how doom is approaching and chaos will reign, but all I could think of was, this is how it really starts. I've played WoW since 2005, yet at the time, I did not really understand the lore implications from WarCraft 3. Going through the story, there will be times I gasp or make a connection that might seem trivial to a well-versed lore master, which I am not. If you have a favorite lore moment or implication, let me know in the comments below.
You must rally the Horde and lead your people to their destiny.
We start out in the Arathi Highlands as Thrall awakes from a terrible dream. The prophecy Man-Raven from earlier appears and tells us that it was more of a vision than a dream. After playing through StarCraft and Brood War, I was interested to see what Blizzard implemented from their experience, and what they might shy away from. One of the biggest changes to Warcraft 3, and probably one of the most impactful, was the control of heroes, like Thrall in the Prologue. Heroes add so much to the campaign, whether that was through leveling up skills and their usage against your enemies, or the storytelling they could provide through stats, and we'll get to that later. For now, Thrall and the player learn about the fog of war, movement, combat, that sort of thing. Of course, this is needed, but the voice for this tutorial mission was kind of out of place. Why not have some flair to it, rather than some monotone person?
The Murlocs would make excellent targets for your new Chain Lightning spell.
We master the basics and find the Prophet, who admits that he placed himself within Thrall's dream, but doesn't tell us who he is. Furthermore, he laughs when Thrall calls him human, so I don't know how trusting to be. He does explain that he has seen the future and it's not good. Something about a great burning shadow that will consume the world, same shtick as the cinematics. The Prophet also tells Thrall to save his people, he'll need to travel west to Kalimdor and leave the eastern kingdoms behind. Thrall takes the Prophet's words to heart and orders the clans to set a sail. Unfortunately, an orc by the name of Hellscream is nowhere to be found, and we're not leaving without this guy. This was a good next step for the prologue, and even though some might not like the basic build a base, produce X units, it works well here since it adds to the pacing of the game. I was not kidding when I said this game was long, especially with the Frozen Throne expansion. It's why I threw out the notion of the epic, a story of voyage and adventure. Having this prologue and warming up to the absolute crazy interdimensional hellscape apocalypse that's coming, it's a great direction. Another cool implementation the developers added was the day-night cycle. It's less impactful for the orcs, but for night elves it's super useful. Even without any buffs, I enjoyed the cycle since it again plays into the actual world we're inhabiting and playing through. We build up a grunt army and storm the humans' defenses, finding Hellscream momentarily captured.
I'm fine, little brother. Luckily, they only injured my pride.
A swift jailbreak ensues and Hellscream has the good idea to commandeer the human ships for our trip to Kalimdor. Unfortunately, it's not the easiest trip, and the stolen ships are beset by the open sea's sudden and fierce storms. To stop any more damage to them, Thrall orders the clans to seek shelter in a cove nearby. I also found it interesting that they have Northrend on the map and the Maelstrom, which in classic WoW neither were there. Did the cartographers forget to add them, or was this purely for the expansion's sake? Regardless, we're not in Kansas anymore. Our ships are foobarred and the storm is not settling. We do meet a tribe of trolls led by Sen'jin, who informs us that humans have colonized the island. That's not a great thing for Thrall for two reasons. One, more resistance when we're almost sunk is not easy to approach. Secondly, the humans could easily send a raven or mage to convey to Lordaeron that the orcs were on the move, thus more reinforcements would be sent. We set up base and do our normal starting plays. Another great aspect of Warcraft 3's main campaigns are the side quests, which I barely remembered. I really enjoyed this mechanic since it made the player engage with lots of the enemies for the chance at items or gear progression. Not only are you leveling heroes that have ability progressions and tangible power scaling, you're also accomplishing feats outside the main quest, which if anyone's played WoW, completing a quest is a dopamine rush. Sometimes you'll get unique dialogue and cutscenes for completing optional quests, which expands on the character's lore and world history. This reward was neat since after cleansing the fountain, you get free heals for the rest of the mission, which is I think the only way to heal grunts at this time apart from wards. We take on the human encampment easily, I swear even one siege weapon does the trick, but a familiar foe appears. I swear I've murdered 1,000,000 Murlocs in Red Ridge in my lifetime.
The fish creatures have come to take us away.
Your meddling magics will no longer interfere with our plans, Land Dweller.
The Murlocs and some sinister magic behind them capture Thrall, Sen'jin, and most of the raiding party to bring them into the depths of the island. This brings us to the next level, which is a massive jailbreak from Thrall and the boys. Before it starts, some headhunter regales us on how the Murlocs were once peaceful, but now use trolls as sacrifices. It's levels like these that make Warcraft 3 shine in my opinion. Warcraft 3 is much more of a unit-intensive game than StarCraft is, and when controlling only a few amount of characters plus your hero, the player's micro will determine if they progress or not. But this doesn't just apply to this level, it's throughout the whole entire game. In my experience playing, sending units with an attack order and just forgetting about them would certainly lead to their utter annihilation. Units matter because they aren't just attacking, they're buffing, debuffing, silencing, healing, doing something other than the main function of taking health away from an opponent. It makes each faction feel unique since you'll have a widely different spellcasting and static abilities for the armies you'll be raising. For now, Thrall needs to find Sen'jin and get the hell out of this place before being used for some dark ritual.
Then we have no time to lose. Sen'jin must be freed.
Warcraft 3 is also a difficult game at times, and apart from autosaves, will not be so supportive. As I said before, player micro is vastly important, and you'll have some points throughout the video that I lose a good chunk of my forces to bad micro. It happens to the best of us. This is a huge level, so I'll cut to the chase. We free the prisoners and get to the ritual, but not soon enough. We attack the guards and take down the magical barrier to engage the Murloc priest and get revenge for Sen'jin. Before his passing, the troll tells Thrall that he had a vision that Thrall would lead his trolls off the island. This is pretty awesome lore-wise, since this is how the Horde becomes the Horde, right? Also, isn't the troll village outside the Orc starting area named after Sen'jin? Anyways, Thrall is a great diplomat and convinces the trolls to follow the Horde to Kalimdor.
Those of you who wish to follow me will face many dangers. It will not be easy. But if you wish to join us, you are welcome.
Well, I guess the Murlocs were worshipping a real god, since after disrupting whatever they had going on down there, a sea witch appears to Thrall screaming bloody murder for what we've just done, and I guess blows up the volcano on our base? The ships aren't repaired yet, and we get our first Hold the Line mission. Now, I'm starting a counter for how many of these missions there are in the full campaign, since it did feel like a lot, but I digress. Defending in Warcraft 3 can be fun, especially when you upgrade the orc buildings to do damage against attackers. We also get an optional quest to rescue the remaining trolls, which we can easily do. With a lot of trees chopped and a ton of dead orcs, we defend against the onslaught of forces and make it to the ships. The Sea Witch makes some villainous remarks as the Horde departs, and Thrall doesn't really question it, more focuses on the trip ahead to Kalimdor and what it means for his people. But that does it for the prologue, and we change perspectives to a different leader. Wow, it's so wild to see the places my characters have walked around in WoW being flown over by the Prophet. Also, neat detail when entering Lordaeron is the discussion being had about the orcs moving west. After all the animosity and fighting between the two races, to have your enemy just up and leave would be quite worrying. But even more worrisome is talk about a plague.
This plague that has gripped the Northlands could have dire ramifications.
Plague? You wizards are just being paranoid.
All of that falls by the wayside when the Prophet appears, who also advocates to the king to move west to Kalimdor, which, yeah, that's wild to think the humans would just up and leave based on one dude's prophecy.
I failed humanity once before, and I will not do so again. If you cannot take up this cup, then I shall find another who will.
Our next mission is the defense of Strombrad, which has us commanding Artha, son of the king, and learning to be a holy paladin. He is accompanied by Uther the Lightbringer to take care of a band of orcs, I guess not taken by Thrall. This mission felt like it served as another tutorial. I don't know if this is valid information, but I thought I read somewhere that the Thrall Prologue campaign was a demo for the game, but let me know if that's not true. Halfway through the level we already get two iconic spells, our Healing Light and Protection Aura. Again, it's like nostalgia and current dopamine were injecting into my brain. I was simultaneously my 10-year-old self and an adult who still plays WoW. We arrive at the village and kill off the raiding party. I really enjoy the aesthetics of this game when it comes to the art style and landscape. Villages look unique, player-built buildings have unique animations, and the units seem to fit perfectly into the wide streets. Unfortunately, Artha's and gang are a bit late to save everyone and see some villagers being taken. We have a photo op with the peasantry and are called back by Uther for some unknown reason.
I sent 2 of my best knights into parley with the Orc leader. They should be returning shortly. Damn. These orcs will never surrender.
Dastardly orcs. But those knights' deaths shouldn't obfuscate the conversation that Arthas and Uther have. Uther explains that even though they need to save the villagers that were taken, if compelled by bloodlust and hate, that shies away from the paladin ways and makes them closer to orcs. Now, I will say I believe the paladins have a talent called Vengeance. Maybe Arthas just takes it too far. We'll see. Uther is confronted by some Blade Master of Blackrock clan. Say that at least 3 times fast. We soon come to understand that these orcs are not messing around and have begun the human sacrifices. This game is brutal, like demonically dark and horrifying if you think about it. Already we've been set up to fear an invasion from the skies, there are sea witches murdering trolls for some dark god, and now we get orcs screeching about doom approaching and slitting throats. The whole Valiant Paladin thing might not work with these guys. Anyways, we unlock Riflemen and kill some drakes to get a heart as the optional quest. We continue on and face the Blade Master, who is swiftly dealt with, and head back to Uther to tell him our findings. To be honest, this playthrough I felt a little bit more on Arthas' side at first. Not the murdering thousands of people or turning evil, but at least right now, Uther is dismissing his emotions and observations. That's not really what a good mentor does, and not even hearing Arthas about the demons claiming they defeated them millennia ago is kind of tone deaf. Arthas is somewhat a tragic character at first since he does want to help these people. Obviously it might not work out that way, but it isn't some sort of switch for him. We get a reprieve from Uther and Arthas to meet Jaina Proudmoore, which I kind of geeked out on a little. We're in Dalaran and see an interaction between some High Lord mage and the Prophet, who I guess has come to him before since the mage references saying no another time. Jaina appears from the shadows and is given the mission of traveling north and finding out anything she can about the plague that was mentioned before. Another neat detail is the map before each mission. It really grounds the player in the adventure since your characters are traveling great distances and it might be confusing where they were going or going to without the map. Another small gasp at seeing Brill and having the realization about some of the starting areas. We're reunited with Arthas, who has some sort of history with Jaina and who he speaks very highly of.
We must help her!
Stay your blade, Captain. She can take care of herself. Gentlemen, meet Miss Jaina Proudmoore, Special Agent to the Kirin Tor, and one of the most talented sorceresses in the land.
Plus, I feel like it's at least a little flirtatious, but thank God they didn't try to pull a Kerrigan Rayner type of deal.
It's been a while since a prince escorted me anywhere.
Regardless, we set off to find information on the plague, if it's real, and how it's spreading. After a couple of minutes, Arthas and Jaina arrive at a dire sight, a tainted granary. They instantly realize that the area is corrupted, and worse, that the crates of grain bear the regional seal of Anderhall, meaning they'll be distributed throughout the whole north. We continue on and find elves from Quel'Thalas. I was pretty taken aback seeing them since they must have traveled a long way to get here, and I completely forgot they were chill with the Alliance first.
We've been discovered, my brothers. Flee and continue with the operation. I'm sorry I can't stay and chat, but duty calls.
I love how nonchalant Kel'Thuzad sounds being caught. We have no idea who this guy is, but there is obviously something rotten in the state of Denmark. We get our first fight against the Undead Scourge, which, damn, those ghouls' teeth are gnarly. Jaina explains to Arthas what a necromancer is and that she believes him to be behind the plague. Next stop, Anderhall. We set up the base and train some units, attack the undead base outside of Anderhall, and Arthas' hunch was right. We do find Kel'Thuzad spreading the plague. He is even nice enough to tell us about the cult of the damned and that he is using the grain to spread the miasma. Not only that, but Kel'Thuzad name drops Mal'Ganis, and we're in for a fantasy about eternal darkness.
And what exactly is this scourge meant to cleanse?
Why, the living, of course.
That's a haunting line and well delivered. I also got a spine shiver when Stratholme was mentioned, something I vividly remember my first playthrough. But before that, the heroes are too late to stop the grain shipments, and we confront Kel'Thuzad, giving him a piece of our paladin power. Or he just melts. We head to Hearthglen and find out that the town is preparing for battle. We send Jaina off to get Uther, but Arthas makes a grim discovery. The tainted grain had already made it to this village, turning the villagers into zombies. Oh, we're on number 2 of Hold the Line missions. This time it's for 30 minutes. Whether or not there might be more than enough of these missions, I'm a tower defense fan, and there is something fun about commanding a hero while also building up your defenses. But it's not all defense. You get an optional quest about 10 minutes through asking you to deal with a caravan of tainted grain all the way across the map. It stretches the player's micro by having you command one squad while also maintaining your base. This mechanic will get more advanced the larger the levels are and more complex the enemies get. For now, we defeat the caravan and hold out until Uther arrives.
I'm surprised that you kept things together as long as you did, lad. If I hadn't arrived just then...
Look, I did the best I could, Uther. If I'd had a legion of knights riding at my back, I would have...
Now is not the time to be choking on pride.
Your welcome would have also sufficed. Uther comes in scolding Arthas, and I'm confused on why, since we defended the city damn well. He explains that each fallen soldier is another one for the damned, and how pride can't take over judgment. But again, what was Arthas supposed to do? And aren't you supposed to be teaching him? We continue north from Hearthglen to Stratholme, but before we reach the city, Arthas is stopped on the road. The Prophet tries to get Arthas to leave the Eastern Kingdoms, which, dude, what is up with you wanting everyone to move west? With no other pitch than it's destiny or whatever. Arthas of course refuses, but the Prophet has a pretty dire retort about the harder Arthas tries to slay his enemies, the faster he'll deliver his people to their doom. Which, yeah, kind of in retrospect. I do have to point out that the new Arthas model is kind of weird, and in my opinion looks more like a Final Fantasy character than anything else. We get to chapter 6, The Culling, and Arthas and Uther's relationship has passed the point of no return, since the plague has reached Stratholme. Uther hasn't seen any of the undead transformations, so killing off the population seems like madness.
This entire city must be purged.
What? How can you even consider that? There's got to be some other way.
Uther, as one of the top paladins, can't exorcise the undead or something though, and refuses to help Arthas with the city. In response, Arthas calls Uther a traitor and dismisses him from the paladin order. Plus, Jaina wants nothing to do with this either, and both characters walk away. Now, this would be a great time for Arthas to think, the two people I've known my entire life just walked away from me. Maybe I'm making the mistake. The purge commences. I believe this is one of the only map changes to fit more into the WoW aesthetic and narrative. They remade Stratholme much like the dungeon we see in vanilla, and I truly appreciate that. It's a nice touch and brings the worlds more together. And we get to see why Stratholme looks the way it does. Before we make our move, we meet Kel'Thuzad's master, Mal'Ganis. Not only is this a horrifying story beat, it also brings us to the gameplay of the level, trying to outpace Mal'Ganis and killing civilians. In a way, you can see why Arthas wants the city purged, because if he doesn't, then Mal'Ganis will turn them all undead. But to what end? You can fight Mal'Ganis, even though he does respawn, which helped from time to time gain an advantage, but before I knew it, we had culled 100 civvies. Mal'Ganis is confronted, gives a villainous speech about Arthas' true destiny just beginning, and Arthas will need to travel to Northrend to find Mal'Ganis, since he teleports away like a little demon bitch.
I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth if I have to. Do you hear me?
To the ends of the earth!
We meet back up with Jaina and Uther 3 days after the culling, and Stratholme has seen better days. Jaina explains to Uther that Arthas has followed Mal'Ganis north, Uther needs to warn the king, and Jaina is confronted by the prophet, who again tries to get her and the humans to move west, stating that it's the only way to combat the shadow and save the world from the flame. But we don't see that now, since the next mission has Arthas and squad land on the shores of Northrend.
This howling wind cuts to the bone and you're not even shaking. My lord, are you alright?
Again, I know for myself and others that have experienced this universe for a while, it's a great feeling adventuring into Northrend, even if it gets a little chilly. You also start with Diddly Squat, which is a great way of showing that half the ships didn't make it, and Arthas made a poor choice coming here. Arthas is lucky to find a cohort of dwarves led by none other than his old friend Mirrodin Bronzebeard, who has been stranded here for God knows how long. Even funnier is how Arthas responds in somewhat of disbelief, since I don't think he even knew the dwarf was missing.
Rescue? Mirrodin, I didn't even know you were here.
Anyways, we help defend the dwarves and rescue their base. We get access to our first flying unit, but to be honest, I don't think I ever used the gyrocopter other than Scout. But I'm glad I did, since there was a fair bit of the undead area that you could uncover. The undead aren't chumps, and take a lot of manpower to take down. Eventually we succeed, and Arthas questions Bronzebeard about why they were there in the first place. The dwarf mentions some sort of vault and a sword named Frostmourne, but before we can ask more questions, the captain appears and tells us there is no sign of Mal'Ganis here. The next mission starts out with an emissary from the king declaring this expedition's end, and that Arthas is recalled back to the capital based on Uther's counsel. Arthas starts going adolescent psycho with dad control issues and decides that burning all the boats that they came with, plus the emissaries, is the best course of action.
The ships must be burned before the men reach the shore.
Isn't that a bit much, lad?
Burned down to their frames! No one goes home until our job here is done.
Thus stranding everyone on the island. Bronzebeard barely counters Arthas, and we go off smashing boats. With Arthas's remaining soldiers with the emissary, we have to make do with the mercenaries that we find along the way. It's a cool mechanic based on story elements, and I appreciate the change in units, even if it's still ranged or melee based. You can also see how devastating the Scourge is to the land, sort of like Creep for the Zerg. The Scourge truly plagues the lands, and Reforged does a good job at showcasing that. We burn the last ship and are caught red-handed, or so I thought. Arthas quickly throws the mercenaries under the bus, which hurt to see. They only tried to help us, and Arthas kills them in cold blood based on his own plan. Arthas tells his warriors that now the only way home is going through the interior of the island, and we enter Chapter 9, Frostmourne. Obviously, Bronzebeard is uneasy to say the least about what Arthas has just done, but we don't have much time to talk, since Mal'Ganis finally shows his ugly face and taunts Arthas about his trap, yada yada.
Trapped and freezing at the roof of the world, with only death to sing the tale of your doom.
With the camp surrounded, Arthas and Mirrodin venture out to grab Frostmourne, and we have to defend the base. Arthas has had a long list of red flags in the last missions, but none should be bigger than gigantic guardians of a tomb saying they're trying to protect Arthas, not the sword. But before Arthas can sword and stone it, Mirrodin reads the glyph and exclaims that it has a powerful curse on it, and that both should leave immediately. Sadly, we know Arthas is not going home empty-handed, and has this mentality about taking on a curse for his homeland.
Now, I call out to the spirits of this place. I will give anything, or pay any price, if only you will help me save my people.
This is a classic power grab from someone who thinks they're self-righteous and giving, yet is truly selfish and corrupt. And what do you know, Arthas makes a pact with the devil, sacrificing his old-time friend for a chance to wield the cursed sword. With Frostmourne in hand, a quick aura and eye change from our boy Arthas, we head to Mal'Ganis to show off our new shiny toy. But there was a ton of resistance on the way, and it makes me want to talk about one of the downsides I found while playing longer missions. Hitting the high upkeep is a drag, no matter how you view it. Gaining less resources while also needing to still produce units and upgrades didn't feel right. With the focus more on micro, the unit count of 100 also plays a role, so later in levels you'll have maybe 2 to 3 combat groups tops that are hard to refill. It kind of negatively impacted the pacing a bit since you were just waiting around for units to replenish your armies. Nevertheless, Arthas gets past Mal'Ganis' forces and confronts the demon, who again says, "This was the plan all along." But was it? Hubris be thy name.
What does the Dark Lord of the Dead tell you now?
He tells me that the time for my vengeance has come.
What? He can't possibly mean to...
It is finished.
Mal'Ganis falls to Frostmourne from a very satisfying thrust, and I never really understood the importance of this until now. Killing Mal'Ganis was Arthas' main mission. It really led him all the way to this point, and now with that fulfilled, what is his purpose? That might have been the point, right? With his only wish done, there is now only a body and mind to take over without a will. What do you think about this? We get a small cutscene showing Arthas going into the Frozen Lands, and this is what I think people would have liked to seen redone, maybe more details than just a Club Penguin snowstorm. And here is somewhat of the game confirming the empty vessel theory I was just talking about. Frostmourne has completely turned Arthas crazy, no matter how eloquently he speaks for the rest of time. That's not the Arthas we knew. I think this is one of the most iconic cinematics in 2000s gaming, at least for myself. The bells chiming of the prince's return after an undead invasion that has ravaged the northern lands seems like a celebration. Cue the roses and the people praising the prince's solo return. The music cues tell the player that something terrible is going to happen. Also, the change in armor from the paladin's lion with blue and gold hues to the skulls with blue and white colors is just a great detail. Another great detail as well is Arthas' father trying to talk to him, but Frostmourne drowns him out, only convincing Arthas of his next act.
And you no longer need to sacrifice for your people. You no longer need to bear the weight of your crown. I've taken care of everything.
You don't forget the shot at 10 years old.
What is this? What are you doing, my son?
Succeeding you, father.
This kingdom shall fall, and from the ashes shall arise a new order that will shake the very foundations of the world.
So, Arthas usurps his father, takes over the kingdom, and declares every day Corruption Day. Praise it, praise it. We hop to our next campaign, the Undead. Chapter 1 begins literally trudging through the ashes. With the king deposed, the capital city and surrounding lands seem to have succumbed to the plague. Shocked and disheartened by the loss of their king, the forces of Lordaeron have scattered. We open with a cutscene of Tichondrius, a dreadlord similar to Mal'Ganis, teleporting Arthas to an unknown location. The dreadlord congratulates Arthas on his bad deeds, and Arthas sort of reflects on exactly that, even if there isn't a shred of remorse in him.
Yes, I've damned everyone and everything I've ever loved in his name. And I still feel no remorse, no shame, no pity.
Now that Arthas is under the Lich King's control, he's set on the task of reclaiming the Cult of the Damned and finding followers hidden within the populace. Changing over to the Undead was impactful after playing the humans and even orcs at first. The narrative shifts between the quote-unquote good to the obviously demonic, and it's not only reflected by the story itself, but the units and specifically Arthas' change in hero skills. It might not be a lot of spells, but suddenly having to learn new abilities and how they work for your armies makes the switch tangible. Once you get the feel of the new leader down and the progression hits like what we talked about before, it's great gameplay, and it's from 2002. Artha and company round up acolytes throughout the various villages and the cult is restored. Tichondrius gives Artha his next task, and already you can tell Artha is not fond of taking orders, especially from dreadlords.
They will aid you in your next undertaking.
And what's that?
Plus, his next quest is to find Kel'Thuzad's remains, who I'm pretty sure Artha still hates even though both are now undead. Unfortunately, we can't just reanimate him on the spot and have to find a powerful conduit. We get our undead siege weapon, which absolutely pulverizes towers and has some secondary use for carrying corpses later on that works well with the necromancer. For now, Artha pushes on, and I like the small detail of his former paladins trying to reason with him. This is only the second campaign, and we've already had this fall from grace of Artha, and the world seems to be on the point of collapse. Interestingly, the player themselves are helping orchestrate that. We get to Kel'Thuzad's body, and his ghost or spirit talks to Artha briefly.
What the? Am I hearing ghosts now?
It is I, Kel'Thuzad. I was right about you, Prince Artha.
Tichondrius teleports in and tells us that we're heading north to Quel'Thalas, which has the High Elf Sunwell capable of returning Big T back into the mortal world. We also have to make a detour before, to obtain some holy urn in order to protect Kel'Thuzad's body on the journey. Easy, right? Warcraft 3's maps do a great job at showcasing how big the world is. I mentioned it a lot in my StarCraft 2 retrospectives. The developers utilizing portions of the map as phases throughout the mission is genius, and makes the player feel like they're actually exploring as well as developing their armies. We get our first crack at building undead structures, and the only thing I don't like about them as a faction is that ghouls are needed for wood gathering. They're good frontline melee, what can I say? Another thing I realized when playing through the undead missions and beyond that is, unlike StarCraft, you can't just spam units and expect to win. You might see in the Undead Campaign I spam a certain unit, it usually doesn't go well for me. The Reforged buildings look okay for the undead, but I still can't shake the fact that I'm playing some HD texture pack rework of the 2002 version, rather than a fully dedicated remaster. We build up our army and take out the 3 paladins in the neighboring town, which brings out a familiar face. Damn, I wonder what's going through Uther's mind seeing Artha like this. Even more messed up is that the urn that Tichondrius has demanded is the one that houses Arthas' father's remains. Like, guys, that's pretty dark to exchange that with the literal necromancer that facilitated the Scourge in the first place.
I didn't know what it held. Nor does it matter. I'll take what I came for one way or another.
I thought it was interesting they had us fight Uther in-game rather than just show his death at first. Uther does take us down to 1 HP, but Artha prevails and kills his former mentor.
I dearly hope that there's a special place in hell waiting for you, Artha.
We may never know, Uther. I intend to live forever.
Now, ready for the journey to the Elven City, Kel'Thuzad appears to Artha with some interesting information. One, that the Dreadlords are actually the Lich's jailers rather than workers, and that no one else can see Big T except for Artha, which might be advantageous later on. Artha and squad head north to Quel'Thalas, yet are halted on the road by Elven defenses, gigantic gates that are magically protected. There wasn't anything specifically special about the level. I did enjoy the visuals of the Scourge creeping towards the city, and fond memories of a starting area in Burning Crusade. Nevertheless, the Scourge keep advancing and we meet Sylvanas Windrunner, a badass elf that I guess is defensive leader for the elves. However, she does inform in Marvel style that Artha cannot get past the gates because he doesn't have the 3 keys to Silvermoon. Well, great job for telling him what he exactly needs. Artha quickly sets off finding you-know-what, and we wipe the whole map clean before entering the city. And Sylvanas is starting to figure out that the undead might be a little bit more than the elves can handle.
Damn you monsters! What will it take to drive you back?
The ranger woman is starting to vex me greatly.
Tichondrius shows up again, and the tension is building between him and Arthas, especially since Kel'Thuzad exclaims later that he believes the Dreadlord is suspicious of the former Crown Prince. The next level has a good mechanic of the runners, or elves that are trying to contact the main force. The game does a good job at progressing the player through harder microing sequences. This level you'll have to negotiate between taking down the runners and protecting your base. We quickly make it to the main gates and find Sylvanas and a small contingent of elves, which doesn't do anything. You could tell throughout the Elven conquest that Arthas has been getting progressively more angry at Sylvanas, but nothing justifies what he does next.
The last thing I'll give you is the peace of death.
No, you wouldn't dare.
Arthas doesn't kill Sylvanas. He damns her soul, or someone with more lore knowledge could tell you more. Essentially, she becomes a banshee that takes orders from him. The narrative is playing a lot with the themes of corruption and domination, and it seems at this point there is no safe place left in this world. Hell, the orcs have been riding west and we haven't heard anything since the prologue. One minor bright side of Sylvanas' demonic transformation is that the player has two heroes. Again, progression of micro will separate good and great players. Heroes alone do a lot more damage than most units, but it's truly their abilities that shine, and being able to utilize up to 8 spells now gives the player a rewarding challenge. The dastardly duo crush their way past the final elven defenses, and Frostmourne reveals some tricks under its cold demeanor. Like, that's pretty cool. What's not cool is Arthas promising to commit genocide on the elven people because they quote-unquote stubbornly refuse to keel over and die. Oh, and also Kel'Thuzad is reborn. I do have to ask why the Dreadlords wanted Kel'Thuzad to come back. If they are truly the jailers of the Lich King, how could he influence them on this? Arthas has made true his part of the deal, and Kel'Thuzad tells the Death Knight that the Lich King's Phase 1 plan was to engineer the Scourge, eradicating any resistance when something called the Legion would arrive. Phase 2 involves summoning some demon, but we'll need help with that. Luckily, some orcs still have a demon gate open, and Arthas and the newly reformed Kel'Thuzad set out on massacring the orc heroes. With the head clans dissolved, Kel'Thuzad convenes with the demonic portal, and we meet our master, Archimonde.
You called my name, puny lich, and I have come. You are Kel'Thuzad, are you not?
Archimonde is pretty badass looking, even as a projection. He tells the boys that there is a powerful tome they must find, some sort of spell book from Medivh, the last Guardian. Guardian of what? I have no clue. And the tome isn't just dusting away in a tomb. No, it's in another very important city, Dalaran. Our next mission is the Siege. Arthas and Kel'Thuzad are confronted by the Kirin Tor. If my memory correctly serves me, they're kind of magical jailers. Let me know if I'm off on that. Antonidas, a powerful mage for the Kirin Tor, have set up barricades of magic that dissolve any undead that stand in its aura, but that's not going to stop us, now is it?
Your petty magics will not stop me, Antonidas.
We set up the base and built our army out, exploring the city of Dalaran as the Scourge was great and had me feeling powerfully evil. The city is also huge and the layout is kind of separated, so the downside was reinforcing her armies just taking so much time. Another downside though was the unit pathing. I've been waiting to talk about this for a while, but the lack of flow when it came to unit movement in groups was apparent. Hit boxes for your units felt large, and Reforged didn't address the spacing within the level design at all. You'd select a control group to go somewhere, and the units would trickle in what looked like a single file line since they didn't spread out. I instantly thought about the unit pathing in StarCraft, and specifically the Dragoon. That was abysmal, and throughout playing WarCraft 3 Reforged, I couldn't help but wonder why they didn't smooth it out, because it was worse than the Dragoons. Regardless, we had wizards to kill, and a lot of them. 3 Archmagi and then 9 Council Wizards, whatever the hell that means. You really do feel like a Death Knight murdering scores of humans, orcs, and elves as Arthas. At this point, I was questioning how the Scourge might lose all of this, and that comes with an important point. The story up until now has been excellent, wouldn't you agree? There are enough questions, answers, and intrigue for the player to absolutely be hooked in at this point. If not for the story, then the progression and gameplay, plus the thought of new factions to learn and master, you've got yourself one hell of a game so far. I'll spare the whole circle of wizards killing, but with their defenses down and Dalaran sacked, Arthas and Kel'Thuzad take the spellbook, and the first piece to summoning Archimonde is complete. Kel'Thuzad is ready to summon, but unfortunately we've left quite the wake of death and despair behind us, and the Alliance isn't too pleased with that. We also have to add our counter to the holdout mission, standing at 3. This was a typical holdout mission except for one thing. I've read that at times Warcraft Reforged can be overly difficult, like not balanced for the campaign. There were specifics people on Reddit talked about, but one of the experiences I had like this was during this 30-minute defense. I put what I thought was enough defense with fully upgraded units and a level 9 Arthas to defend until the end. Remember, this was 30 minutes of setup at normal speed. What came for me in the final minutes was beyond hell. At a minute 33 left in the map, I saw the Alliance forces mobilizing. Thinking about how much time was left, I wasn't sweating too much. But then, not 10 seconds later, the flood happens. I stood in disbelief at how many units the AI threw at me. Even if I had 20 more ziggurats, I don't think I could have defended this. Like, what is this? How are you supposed to do this with only one hero? Do you see how many fucking griffins they have? The Alliance beelines for Kel'Thuzad, and with 22 seconds left, he is killed and the summoning is thwarted. Well, that didn't feel so good. Even though you do get a cool, unique cutscene of Arthas' death, maybe it's like Harambe for this universe. I was pretty mad, but then I remembered some magical words from 23 years ago, and it made it all better. The next cutscene is Archimonde playing in the sandbox. Oh wait, no, that's a voodoo doll city. And that's the end of the Undead Campaign. Pretty nifty cliffhanger. I'm glad we get back to the orcs after a bunch of heavy-hitting drama. I feel like Thrall calms me down more than anything, but the situation he and the Horde find themselves in is nothing less than stressful. With heavy damage sustained through their voyage to Kalimdor, Thrall and friends have landed in the Barrens. Oh, sweet, sweet Barrens. With many displaced from the storms, the young war chief sets off to find his lost warriors. Thrall has a pretty sick chain lightning spell that makes him so good when fighting against groups of monsters. We make our way through the new land and stumble upon another leader. Cairn, leader of the Bloodhoof Tauren. It's truly amazing to see how the Horde and Alliance come to be through adverse odds. I can see why both sides feel so strongly about their positions and treaties. Thrall helps out the Taurens defend their village from the raiders, and now I truly have no qualms taking these guys out near the mushroom pools. With the defending of the village complete, Thrall and Cairn briefly talk about the possible future living plans for the orcs, but more marauders are on the way and Thrall decides to help the Taurens with escorting their caravan out of the harm's way. This wasn't a terrible mission, but whenever the AI units are on a set follow path, I'll always be a bit antsy. It's just the fact that their movement is a bit delayed, or sometimes they would freeze up, but nothing too major. We get to the third oasis and get this epic cutscene from Cairn, who kills massive amounts of marauders with smart thinking.
Let the fury of the Earth Mother deal with these wretches as they deserve. They will trouble us no more. And you, young war chief, are free to continue your quest.
I also forgot to mention the Oracle, another reason why Thrall was helping out. Cairn talks about the Oracle as someone who can show you your destiny, and that they're at the base of Mount Hyjal. He is also willing to give Thrall his best kodos for the journey. Meanwhile, we get a continent switch back to the Eastern Kingdoms, where the Burning Legion invasion has started. Yeah, I didn't realize how hard humans got decimated in this game. Things are not looking good. We get a dialogue between Tichondrius, the Dreadlord, and Manaroth, another type of Demon Lord. They allude to an orcish failure that I presume was leaving for Kalimdor, and Manaroth seems pretty upset for having such a cute face. Archimonde scolds both of them as Supreme Demon or whatever, and I do enjoy that even the demons have this outranking trope. Back west, Thrall meets back up with Hellscream and finds out that the humans have also made the journey out here. With the humans disposed of, Hellscream tells Thrall that Jaina Proudmoore is leading them, and have cornered off the northern passage to the Oracle. Thrall needs to get through, but gives Hellscream strict orders not to harm the humans. This is a perfect example of the soap opera comparison. You know Hellscream is not going to listen to Thrall. That's his character. His name is literally Hellscream. I enjoy it because it creates another narrative to follow in this gigantic web of stories. We ironically fight through the human forces and buy ourselves some sick zeppelins to air travel, and peacefully pass the other human defenses. Surprising no one, Hellscream has a problem with that and calls out Thrall, saying he is weak and that the old days are back since he senses demons around him. Yeah, he's going down that path. Instead of keeping your powerful psychotic ally close to you, Thrall decides that Hellscream should move his clan north into the forest and build a horde settlement. Thrall finds the Oracle, they'll come back for him, like, Jesus, that's pretty frustrating, right? Hellscream doesn't even say a word.
I'll come and find you after we've reached the Oracle.
Our next mission takes us to Ashenvale, a very familiar spot for my level 30 warrior, and a very spooky place too. Immediately, Hellscream and his clan are spotted by a mysterious elf observing the orcish encampment. Hellscream didn't say anything to Thrall directly, but is vocal about his predicament to the camp. It also doesn't help that Hellscream thinks he's hearing things and is freaked out that the forest is silent. This was an interesting mission goal to collect 15,000 lumber. I was taken aback at first since we haven't had a mission like this yet, and it reminded me sort of like Age of Mythology where you had to build the Trojan horse. But this level was not easy, and you could run out of gold if you were not careful before building your next command center. I think these mission types do a good job at making the player balance resources while also taking risks at expansion. The optional quest for this level reinforces that notion, since each tree kill that you get, you'll obtain around 3,000 lumber, saving you a lot of time. The trade-off is that lumber-intensive units and upgrades cost a lot, and how thin can you spread your force attacking those positions and defending the first gold mine that's decently forward settled. We do get the Order of Lumber in and get a cutscene with the Dreadlords who have teleported to Kalimdor and allude to the fact that they've been there before, even naming the demigod that inhabits these woods.
This is the veil of our ancient enemy, the Night Elves demigod, Cenarius.
The Dreadlords hatch a plan to kill off the demigod by using the orcs as cannon fodder and corrupting the fountain with Manaroth's blood, possibly infusing them with great power, but probably damning their souls. Again, this is stuff that I didn't really think about when I was younger. These Legion guys are no joke and are ready to take over everything. The trap works perfectly and the elven demigod is led straight to the orcs. The start had an interesting mechanic that made me feel very puny. Cenarius pile drives literally all 3 of your forward bases, and there's nothing you can do. At this point, you're kind of muscle memory trained to try to defend your stuff, but there is no way in hell you'll get that here. It's also a neat way of showing how much work Hellscream's clan has done up until this point, and it just gets power of the forested into oblivion. Obviously, the orcs know their time is almost up, but the Troll Witch Doctor starts to send some power out in the wilderness, and I wonder what that could be. Hellscream goes out searching. Hellscream is kind of a sad character. His motivations stem from the will to be independent, but he views that through strength, while Thrall is more focused on group independence and creating a home through peace, presumably. Hellscream disregards his witch doctor's warnings about the pool being corrupted, and there's even a poor grunt trying to convince his leader that this is not who they are.
No, that goes against everything the war chief teaches us. We can't let rage overcome us again. No, warrior. We must embrace it as never before.
Oh shit, you know you've turned bad when your demon horns grow and your skin turns blood red. With letting the player back into the map after a major narrative change, this shift particularly felt amazing since that puny feeling was still lingering up until this point. Warcraft 3 makes you feel good being the villain. I'll say it here and now, whether it's Artha as the Scourge or Hellscream imbuing himself with Legion corruption, we were wielding some powerful shit.
I defeated your kind in ages past, and I shall do so again. The demigod has fallen. The war song is supreme.
With our newfound powers, we absolutely demolish the elven bases and kill off Cenarius, just like the Dreadlords wanted. Hellscream is confronted by Manaroth and is told they're now serving the Legion. Hellscream sounds sad about not being free, but again, what did he think would happen from drinking a demon well? Back to Thrall, who gets help from Cairn against the humans blocking the summit to the Oracle. We're informed of wyverns that are held to the west and would make the assault on the human positions easier. I'm sure this quest and others would be doable not accomplishing the side missions, but at this point the player is only helping themselves with what they get. With the human defenses destroyed, I guess Thrall forgot his own words. We see Jaina and her guard walk into some sort of cave that Cairn warns is perfect for an ambush, but we have little choice. A fork in the road takes the leaders in opposite directions, and we follow Thrall through some weird Underdark. Like, what is this doing down here? Who did the stonework? Thrall makes it to this magical barrier, but is stumped on what to do next. Q controlling the chieftain. It was an awesome moment because the level opens up fully. We get both heroes to the Spirit Bridge and have the encounter we've been waiting for.
I knew that we were being followed. Defend yourselves!
Stop! There will be no violence in this place.
That voice. You're no oracle. You're the prophet.
The Oracle is revealed to be the prophet and sort of has tricked each of them to be in this very spot at this very moment. He informs Thrall that the Burning Legion have already taken Lordaeron, and that the only way to defeat them is to team up with Jaina. But before any of that, the prophet also tells Thrall about Hellscream's misfortunes in Ashenvale, which does not please the war chief in the slightest. As the unlikely allies discuss their plans about restoring Hellscream, I couldn't help but feel bad for Thrall. The dude just wants to live peacefully and has to deal with demons, prophetic ravens, and now demonic orcs. We advance on Hellscream's position, but the Burning Legion isn't too far behind, and the invasion has begun. With a bunch of fights to get to the top, Thrall finally makes it and confronts Hellscream, who gives a big lore spiel. Hellscream explains that the orcs gave themselves over to the Dreadlords millennia ago and will never be free from their curse, even though I don't think he thought of that before dipping his toes into the corrupted fountain. Thrall is obviously pissed and the battle ensues. Now, this is a classic lesson in reading the quests and item descriptions. Sheepishly, I'll tell you I lost a lot of guys before realizing I needed to use the soul gem on him specifically. Sorry, orcs. We easily cleanse him of his corruption, but I guess that doesn't mean the others are cleansed too, and Hellscream tells Thrall that they need to face Manaroth in the canyon. Cue another fantastic and iconic cinematic.
A worthy effort, but futile.
Hellscream takes down Manaroth at the cost of his own life, which was spectacular and heartfelt. After being cleansed of his corruption, Hellscream truly felt sorry for his actions and tried to fix what he had wronged. And Thrall is right. In the end, Hellscream defeated a literal demon lord and took away the blood oath that was apparently taken so many years ago in Draenor. And thus concludes the Orcs' main missions and begins the Night Elf campaign. Probably my favorite out of the base game. What's yours? The perspective change to the Night Elves is pretty noticeable, as everyone and their mother thinks it's okay to desecrate our woods, I mean, their woods. I might be a fan of the Night Elves. Regardless, there are many enemies at the base of Mount Hyjal waiting to get their grubby little hands on the Well of Eternity and the World Tree. We meet the priestess Tyrande, who mentions the orcs in the context of them killing off Cenarius, which is kind of cool since it makes the player feel like their actions had consequences. The priestess declares hunting season against the orcs and humans, and we build our base with some archers. Out of all the buildings in the game, the Night Elves I feel are the most dynamic aesthetically. The movement of the buildings while constructing is sort of mesmerizing, and the ability to uproot themselves to reposition is advantageous and makes me think of all the tree-ents from the Lord of the Rings films. But things are not good, since after we take care of the human army, the Legion show up and really burn everything to the ground. Archimonde appears with his lackeys, and the priestess is baffled that the master of the Legion is somehow still alive or in this plane of existence after 10,000 years. We pull a stealth move and somehow the demons fall for it. Now for the hard part. I was excited for a change in pace, especially so close to the start of a new campaign. Microing the priestess was stressful but fun, and I completely understand why people made Dota. The hero possibilities plus the quick control are just another dopamine rush that's so satisfying. We navigate through the Dreadlords and narrowly escape the Scourge clutches with just 2 ballistas and a Hail Mary to Mother Wisp. Tyrande alerts the rest of the Night Elves that the Legion is back with Archimonde at the helm, and they need to awaken the Druids. Like, all of this makes sense. You might be saying of course it does, but I'm impressed by the continuity and pacing that the story has demonstrated so far, especially with so many characters. Unfortunately, the Druids don't have alarm clocks, and will need a special horn to raise them from their slumber.
The undead are advancing upon the nearby barrow dens. The dens seem abandoned, but
there is one druid sleeping within them, sister. He is the wisest and most powerful of all the druids. He must be warned that the Legion has returned.
We fight through enemies and get the Horn of Cenarius, which again shows how big of a play killing that demigod was, because he would have blown that horn the second he saw the Burning Legion coming down. With the horn, the druid awakens called Mr. Stormrage, Malfurion Stormrage.
I smell the stench of decay and corruption in our land. That angers me greatly.
This druid is badass, I'm happy he's on our team. However, I do question the relationship with him and Tyrande. I guess they were former lovers, or still are, since Malfurion says he thought of her every moment he roamed through the Emerald Dream. Malfurion is notified of the mongrels, as his lover calls them, but he might be onto something about an enemy of an enemy is a friend type of deal. I would have to assume this level intentionally makes the player feel like they're on the back foot. Usually gold mines at the beginning of levels are filled, but in this case we're going to have to uproot and find another mine before this one runs out. It's the small things that add onto the player's list of things to think about and made me much more focused on my resource spending than before. We also get an interesting dialogue between Stormrage and the priestess. He comments on how hardened she has gotten since they last spoke. Tyrande counters with the fact that Malfurion has been asleep for 10,000 years, and his retort is why the Night Elves suck sometimes. It's the goddess's plan, yada yada. Yeah, if you think like that, then everything up to this point about corruption of the land through the Burning Legion is the goddess's plan, and it's not a good one. But all of this comes after killing the Furbs, and it brings me to an annoyance with the story that Artha as a character suffers from as well. No one gives these characters alternatives to corruption. We've seen Hellscream freed from it, but Malfurion doesn't have any other way of dealing with them peacefully. Uther doesn't know or have any idea off the top of his head how to save people from the plague. Then each of them throws shade at the other characters who have to deal with the situation at hand. It's like throwing shade at Tyrande, who literally has seen their demon enemies from centuries ago back while the druids were sleeping, is kind of weak. Anyways, Malfurion wakes more druids, and then we set on a quest to wake even more druids. Wow, I guess the horn really needs to be close to these guys. We have to enter the Barrow Deeps, finding the next group of druids, but come across a pack of non-corrupted Furbs, who you can help save their shaman and get a little neat summoning charm from them. Unfortunately, this place also houses something else, a darker Night Elf secret.
Oh no. How could I have forgotten?
While exploring the Barrows, the priestess discovers the prison of Illidan, apparently a strong warrior who fought in the first wars against the Burning Legion. He also happens to be Malfurion's brother, and from the sound of it, they do not have a good relationship. Tyrande flips out on being told she shouldn't free him and goes in on her own, leaving Malfurion to find the druids on his own. Sadly, we meet the druids in feral form, giving more meaning to the talent tree in WoW. We get past most of the feral druids and sound the horn to break them out of the trance. On the other side of the Barrows, we continue from Tyrande's perspective, who is confronted by the Watchers, who exclaim to the priestess that even her goddess has condemned Illidan to his fate, yet that doesn't stop her. I have to admit, we could save so many lives right here, right now by shutting off the game. Jokes aside, Tyrande kills off a lot of Watchers and ends up finding the Demon Hunter, who is pretty calm for someone who has spent 10,000 years in darkness and solitude.
Your voice is like the pure light of the moon upon my mind.
What did he do again? I had to laugh through that Illidan breaks free without breaking a sweat. I don't know if it's because there were different Watchers there, but regardless, I thought it was pretty Hollywood. Illidan agrees to help Tyrande kill the demons, but I would assume he has some scores to settle, especially with his brother, and speaketh the devil.
You were sentenced to pay for your sins, nothing more.
And who are you to judge me? We fought the demons side by side, if you recall.
Tyrande, in her quest to rid the elven world of the Burning Legion, is opening her and her faction up to a lot of uncertainty. Malfurion is right to question her, asking if she had even considered the cost of her actions, and he might be sleeping on the couch tonight.
This betrayer's aid may doom us all before the end. I will have nothing to do with this.
Chapter 6 starts off with Illidan in Fellwood, and already I'm getting a bad feeling about this. Yeah, cue the It's Always Sunny music.
I'll show him that the demons have no hold over me.
Arthas appears out of nowhere, and after the two exchange blows, knowing they are evenly matched, Arthas convinces Illidan that the Skull of Gul'dan, some warlock artifact, is the source of corruption within the woods and the source of Tychondrius' power. I can't help but think Arthas is pulling the same shtick that got him to grab Frostmourne, but who am I to judge? Arthas plays more into Illidan's wishing for more power, and that his master knows all. For someone who just said he wanted to show everyone how incorruptible he is, objectively, this was not a good start. Illidan is pretty badass, and we quickly make work of the Legion's forces. We have a Gollum Precious moment, and instead of destroying the evil artifact, Illidan decides he wants to become stronger than any of the Dreadlords, and takes the skull for himself, transforming him into his World of Warcraft look and reminding me of a Tenacious D song. Empowered by demon power, Illidan takes on Tychondrius and kills him, banishes him. I don't know, that was a bit weird. Obviously, both Tyrande and Malfurion are pissed at Illidan for merging his soul with demon fragments, and he's kind of exiled.
No. Illidan, how could you?
The leader of the undead has been destroyed, and the forests will heal in time.
At the cost of your soul? You are no brother of mine. Be gone from this place, and never set foot in our lands again.
So be it, brother.
Next mission has Thrall and Jaina meeting up with Malfurion and Tyrande so that the Prophet can exposition dump and fill in some questions the players might have. The Prophet admits that he is the reason for the Legion's return, allowing the demons through during the Orcs' transfer to Azeroth. Apparently he was murdered by someone and that war raged in the Eastern Kingdoms after his death. But the biggest reveal of all, that he is in fact Medivh, the last guardian and the mage who wrote the tome that Arthas and Kel'Thuzad used to bring Archimonde into this realm of existence. So I'm a bit confused on if this guy is legit good or not. Obviously he's bringing forces together against the Legion, but something just seems fishy. But there's no time to think, since Archimonde and his Doom Guard are making their way to the World Tree, and the three factions must defend it for 45 minutes. Goodness me, that's number 4. There is more at stake than my mortal time, though. The plan involves using the World Tree to sap the life of Archimonde, or something along those lines that will take away the Night Elf immortality. Malfurion has a great line here.
If pride gives us pause, my love, then perhaps we have lived long enough already.
And I obviously won't make us sit through the full 45 minutes, but I do want to say this mission was epic and I had a lot of fun defending, even though it was number 4. Each minute had my heart rate going faster, thinking about how the AI stormed me with 30 seconds to go last time. Warcraft 3 does spectacle so well, even if it feels much more condensed or focused than StarCraft. I know one's fantasy and the other sci-fi, but I couldn't help but feel more situated within the map during my playthrough of Warcraft 3, while on StarCraft it felt like I was seeing things more from a satellite, if that makes sense. We successfully defend the time limit, and the trap is set for Archimonde. Damn, that demon is big. I still remember watching this back in the day and being blown away by the absolute bomb that goes off. Medivh has a short ending dialogue about how he saved everyone and that everyone set aside their differences for the greater good. Honestly, this is kind of a milquetoast ending, especially without any answers to Arthas, Illidan, the rebuilding of the Eastern Kingdoms, the list goes on. That's why I had to add the Frozen Throne into this video, even though I know we're probably around an hour and a half at this point, because it makes Warcraft 3 even better. And you can see why Reforged doesn't really matter. Apart from the opinions on the aesthetics and some minor changes, this is still the same amazing campaign and it should be played in its entirety, so let's keep going.
Betrayer. In truth, it was I who was betrayed.
And look at that, the first character we see is Illidan, and I was very excited to see how his origin story would continue. Again, the cinematic department killed it back then, and this still holds up today, especially the sound design. I love the way the Naga hiss and groan. Chapter 1 starts us off on the rise of the Naga, and the opening written portion talks about how even though the Burning Legion was successfully destroyed, the areas surrounding Mount Hyjal still have corruption present. Our new hero is a warden named Maiev, a watcher truly hellbent on finding Illidan and returning him to his dark cage. There is sign of Illidan's demonic presence, and we set out on the chase. We quickly find the Naga attacking shoreline settlements, exchange some words, and lob off some fishy heads. In the true fashion of villainy, never wanting your opponent too far off the scent, some Naga tell the Warden that Illidan has set sail to distant shores, probably to the east. The team has to scramble to save the boats from the Naga and swiftly set sail after the Demon Lord hybrid. The Watchers find themselves on newly formed islands, which raises the questions like, how did this happen? Even odder is that Shadowsong recognizes the ruins of Suramar, the ancient Night Elf city before some calamity struck.
The ruins all around us, Naisha. I recognize them. This was once the great city of Suramar, built before our civilization was blasted beneath the sea 10,000 years ago.
Everyone quickly understands that whoever did this probably is more powerful than the combined forces we have now, and we make our base on the island. I'm glad for the most part that they had the base built already. One of my pet peeves I've had with RTS games, especially in StarCraft, was resetting each level, essentially having to build again. Even though it makes complete sense in the context of the story, it takes a long time. For the most part in this expansion, you'll be set up enough at the start of each level, which makes it quicker to jump into the action, which I quite like. We're trying to find Illidan, and the concept of this Watcher literally going around the world to bring Illidan back into his dark prison is awesome. The expansion narrative is a bit more narrow focused than the base game, yet I think that enhances the story and the overall universe. We find Drakthul, a once powerful warlock of the Storm Reaver clan, now the last of his kind.
This old wanderer has no quarrel with you or your kin.
He tasks us to find the restless ghosts that have been haunting him for years, and in exchange, he'll tell us more about his story in the island. We quickly oblige and silence his ghosts. Then, Drakthul returns the favor, telling the player about the warlock Gul'dan. Apparently, he was the one that raised the island in search of the remains of the Dark Titan. The Warcraft universe shines when the darker elements are brought up, and despite the facade of a brighter outlook compared to StarCraft, Warcraft 3 goes down some really dark paths. The Dark Titan is Sargeras, the Burning Legion's creator, whose body is currently underneath us, just like divided into pieces or something. Gul'dan, thinking that opening the tomb would give him Sargeras' powers, tried to gain entry, but doomed his clan in the process.
For his pride, he and the rest of our clan were torn to shreds by crazed demons.
We'll be also fighting and playing as the Naga in this expansion, which I thought was an interesting reprieve from the regular 4-faction fight. Their building exteriors were distinct, and even though their units weren't as diverse as the other roster lists, they pack a punch. We track Illidan to some fortress, and of course it's the same tomb that we just talked about. And I don't know about you, I know Illidan is a bad guy, but I kind of find him badass.
My trusted servants must remain here and guard the entrance. If that wretched Warden managed to reach this island, she'll certainly try to follow us.
It is weird, however, seeing him in this retroactive WoW theme, rather than what he looked like in the original, but it's not that game-breaking. We take out the Naga Guardians and enter the tomb. Illidan is nowhere to be found, but there are strange runes marking the walls of the first room we step foot in. Apparently, they're from Gul'dan himself, and don't paint a pretty picture of the events from 20 years ago. Also, isn't Gul'dan's skull the thing that transformed Illidan? So maybe even in his death, his mission can be completed. Periodically throughout the level when finding the Orcish runes, you'll get these flashbacks with huge red tint to them. I don't know why, I disliked them. I guess it kind of hurt my eyes. Maiev unlocks Blink, and I couldn't help but feel like I was playing Zeratul for a second. And I promise that's the last reference to another universe, but you can see the progression from Blizzard devs, which is kind of awesome. I enjoyed this level for the optional quest. You can find these Shadow Orb fragments that upgrade your damage. I didn't think too much of it until I saw there were 10 outstanding, meaning that you could up your hero's damage by a ton. It's these incentives to upgrade your hero which make Warcraft 3's gameplay so enticing. It's a huge level, and these orbs aren't just sticking out to be discovered. You really have to look for them, which makes finding them even more rewarding. That's a great gameplay mechanic that has multiple effects to the player. Halfway through the tomb, we get confronted by Lady Vashj, and she drops some lore on us about how the Naga were once night elves, until the Well of Eternity imploded on them, somehow cursing them and changing their appearance. She also mentions they follow Illidan now, and so many connections are being made, especially why we kill so many of them in WoW. After dispatching of the Naga ambush, we get another Gul'dan red flashback and figure out he didn't have shit on Sargeras.
I am Gul'dan. I am darkness incarnate. It cannot end like this.
Shadowsong and crew get to the final chamber, and Illidan is there with some great lines. Unfortunately, we're a bit late, and Illidan reveals that he is not after the body of Sargeras, but just a mere portion of it, the eye.
Naivete does not suit you. When I consumed the power of Gul'dan's skull, I inherited his memories, especially those of this place, and the dark prize he coveted.
Illidan causes the tomb to cave in, and we have to abandon our sisters, which was oddly sad, even though I didn't really know them. We escape the crumbling tomb with a minute to spare, and emerge to tell the rest of the group that everyone needs to 2-time it back to Kalimdor and alert Malfurion of what his brother is doing. But Illidan's forces have not stopped and blockade the waterways, leaving the Night Elves with no other choice than to send a runner. This was a good mission, especially having to micro your transports into deploying on solid ground. I haven't talked nearly as much as I should have about the music, but it slaps. The base game has iconic music, but I wasn't expecting so many themes to be stuck in my head from the expansion. We take out the gates blocking the passage to the sea, and the spectacle of these final arches is staggering. The level's design really makes you feel like you're on that ancient island resurfaced. Shadowsong and company defend against the Naga attacks until Malfurion shows up, and the runner was successful. Malfurion fights his way to Shadowsong's position, finding troops on crashed ships and taking care of the aquatic life. The player has to use Malfurion's tree spell in order to reach the defenses, which is pretty genius at the time, manipulating the terrain, especially having an advantage to attack positions. It's really nothing to scoff at, and it's teaching the player in a low-stress situation. Shadowsong, Malfurion, and Tyrande come together, and Shadowsong is rightfully furious with the priestess, most likely killing off the Watcher's guards and freeing one of the most dangerous demon hunters alive.
What you did was murder my Watchers and set the betrayer free. It is you who should be locked in a cage.
Malfurion steps in, but honestly doesn't solve anything. Mort tells both to shut up, which I understand at the moment, but Stormrage doesn't do anything much throughout the story to stop things from escalating, and I'll point out more situations like this at another point. We get another gameplay story mixology where the gold mine has run out and resources are scarce. It truly brings another element to the game where each unit counts greatly, since 125 gold is around 20% of your treasury. Moonwells and just taking my time helped greatly when my armies would go down to low health, and without a healer type, we were getting beat up a lot. Eventually we take down the vast Naga forces and declare victory, but of course Tyrande goes out looking for Illidan by herself and gets captured.
Brother,
what are you doing here?
I've come to stop you, Illidan.
Illidan is a bit taken aback by seeing his brother, but explains to everyone that he is a new master, and a greater task ahead of him. Illidan teleports and Malfurion leads the elves to Lordaeron, or whatever is left of it, since the Scourge has taken most of the northern areas. Shadowsong and the priestess meet none other than Kael'thas, another very iconic figure, and someone you might know if you spent some time in Tempest Keep. For now, though, he commands a small troop of elves that are being hounded by the undead near Dalaran, which tells you things are foobarred here. The priestess offers to help, and Shadowsong is again pissed since their job is to find Illidan, not take side quests. But she makes the deal that he will help them find Illidan after they make it to safety. The art design here is superb. It's creepy, deathly creepy, with the color palettes and in comparison to what the villages looked like before, quite staggering. This is not an easy level either, and the undead really do bring a ton at the player, so make sure that you find the gold and buy mercenaries. Or you might not have an army left at the end. We slowly make our way through Zombie Central and get a fork in the road. One will be safer and take longer, the other is shorter but filled with more dangers. Since my army was falling apart, I chose the long but easy way, and after some slight scuffles, we made it to the river crossing. But the undead are quickly behind and will overrun our small band of elves in no time. The priestess offers herself to defend the bridge, while the others cross, and yet again Shadowsong is questioning how this night elf even got her position. Tyrande is selfish and doesn't explain her reasoning at all, blindly thinking because she works as a priestess that everything is in God's hands. Yeah, that's not how it works. With everyone across, she deploys her ultimate and falls into the river. The prince suggests going after her since the river leads straight into the undead lands, but Shadowsong rejects that idea, stating that Tyrande knew the risks when accepting the defense of the bridge, which I don't think is wrong. Secondly, they have a mission to find Illidan, and going further into the undead lands wouldn't solve that. It's not like Shadowsong forced Tyrande to do this, plus it was her idea to help the stranded caravan in the first place. Just remember that small bit of information. Next mission starts with Malfurion figuring out that the forest corruption is rampant and far-reaching. His visions show Northrend splitting apart and Illidan using the Eye of Sargeras. But instead of acting on all these things after evoking the literal tree spirits, Malfurion is more concerned where his lover is and her fate.
Wait, where is Tyrande?
I'm sorry, Shondo, but the priestess has fallen.
But there is an even bigger fumble. Maybe out of guilt, maybe out of revenge, Shadowsong lies to Malfurion about his girlfriend, which you shouldn't do, stating she saw her getting ripped apart instead of being thrown down the river. It's probably to make him worry about the issues the world faces now instead of his girlfriend, but I think it would have been okay with the logic that she might have just died in that last stand, and even if she didn't, she's just too far into undead territory to go get her. Regardless, the prince and Malfurion meet, and we're told of a little ritual Illidan is performing that must be stopped. It takes the combined strength of both armies, but we finally manage to get through Illidan's myriad of defenses and defeat the summoners. Quick note on this, they don't take physical damage, and I was unsure what was actually damaging them here. If someone knows, please feel free to share. With the ritual in shambles, 3 powerful lords towering over Illidan, how does he get out of this one? Well, at first he tries to sweet-talk himself out of being imprisoned for another 10,000 years by saying his mission is to destroy the Lich King, which I don't think is so important to these specific characters, right? Did they even know who the Lich King is? Since he isn't under the Burning Legion and the Night Elves are more focused on the Dreadlords or demons.
Fools! Can you not see? The spell we channeled was meant to strike at the undead, our common enemy. My mission was to destroy the Lich King's stronghold of Icecrown.
And no heed to the cost! Because of you, Tyrande is dead!
Malfurion is still furious that his brother did all of this, especially thinking that his actions caused Tyrande's death. Cue the scratch on the DJ set. The prince, for some reason, informs Malfurion that Tyrande might not be dead, even though he does not like Illidan at this point, and even said that he would help catch him. The tables are flipped and Malfurion, for some goddamn reason, doesn't kill his brother after all of this, instead focusing on the lie Shadowsong fed him. Again, Illidan using his language and smarts to outwit the stupid druid, pledging his Naga to go downstream and find his lover, is pretty diplomatic. Shadowsong is right. Malfurion trusting his brother after everything he just condemned him for is frustrating. Yet I guess his devotion to the priestess is so much that he will do anything for her. Take that as you will. Illidan's search party finds Tyrande down the river, but assailed by hordes of undead. Illidan and company fight through loads of enemies, while also maintaining 2 bases, which was difficult to say the least. Plus, the enemy defensive positions were no joke, so it was constantly switching back and forth trying to resupply your armies, while also trying not to get them killed quickly by the OP ziggurats. The priestess is obviously baffled by seeing Illidan, let alone him saving her. Illidan has a pretty big heart-to-heart with her, saying that he will always look out for the priestess. I guess he's really in her debt, but I also couldn't wrap my head around all of what happens with Illidan. It's because of her. Tyrande goes AWOL, kills her own faction, and sets free the demon hunter in prison for 10,000 years. Like, Christ, it was all her! Malfurion catches up, and Illidan asks for peace between the Night Elves and him, and they accept.
You have brought much suffering to the world, Illidan. For that, you can never be forgiven. However, you saved the life of my love. For that, I will let you go.
Okay, wow, I didn't expect saving Tyrande to outweigh literally everything the demonic transformation of Illidan did. But before I could even type out the whole sentence, Shadowsong appears, rips these 2 jabronis a new one, and follows Illidan into the portal.
I only pray that in her zeal, she doesn't cause even more havoc than Illidan.
Now, let's go home, beloved. We've earned our rest.
We continue the campaign Curse of the Blood Elves in Chapter 1, Misconceptions. God damn, if I don't hate Grand Marshal Garithos with a passion.
I am not interested in your fanciful excuses. You elves are here to serve the Alliance, thus you will obey my commands to the letter.
This guy single-handedly changes the trajectory of Azeroth for being a true racist piece of shit, and his name should be dragged through the streets of Stormwind and Orgrimmar alike. So, with the Night Elves deserving some rest, I guess the prince still works for the Alliance in some capacity. Garithos is not pleased it took the elves so long to get to his position, even though they were attacked by the undead. Our main task is to repair the observatories, but we have a meager force. Our army makes it to the river and meets a familiar face, Lady Vash, who exclaims to the prince that they no longer work for Illidan, since he pieced out to a different realm, and that they're looking to assist the elves against the undead. As a good faith gesture, they give the boats to cross the river and access the other observatories. Without these boats, we could not cross, and I guess Garithos was trying to set us up for failure? Each repaired observatory gave a good amount of clear vision to the map, which I liked the cause and effect element. With the last one fixed up, Garithos returns and is not pleased by the prince taking aid from the Naga, which he calls inhuman and needing to be crushed. The Grand Marshal is obviously pointing out as well that the elves are inhuman too, and Garithos' vitriol gets worse from here.
They are inhuman and must be crushed like any other enemy. Be careful where you place your loyalties, Blood Elf. I will not tolerate treason in my ranks.
We're next tasked with defending the observatories we just repaired from a gigantic onslaught of the undead. Again, these missions that start out the player's forward bases being absolutely demolished sets the tone and intensity so well. I was starting to sweat, and I might edit in the freak out check mission moment where I couldn't believe how this was going to be possible. And let me tell you, this level was harsh. You have very little resources, so grabbing back one or two of the mines you just lost is paramount. However, your city gets attacked so much by high-level enemies that your army is going to be going back and forth every minute, which just doesn't work. This was the closest I felt to being in a competitive game. Each time I thought I had my defenses ready and counter-attack mapped out, the undead would knock over my towers and kill my forces with ease. By the end of the level, I was base trading with the AI, and for as stressful as this mission was, it was one of my favorites in retrospect and made me feel like I had become somewhat of a better player throughout this journey. We successfully take down the undead, but not without the Naga and Lady Vash's help. The prince and her have a conversation about where Kael wants to take the elves, and Vash convinces him that he should seek a new powerful stream of magic to imbue his followers with purpose.
Then perhaps, young Kael, it is time to find a new path to power and glory.
I can't explain it exactly, but ever since our homeland was destroyed, my brethren and I have felt empty, almost drained of our spirit. There is a hunger now that has hardened our hearts.
Unfortunately, the Grand Marshal comes back quickly, and it seemed like a setup to convict Kael to begin with, but that's not really revealed. We find our prince subdued by the Kirin Tor crystals, yet it's not long after that Vash jailbreaks Kael, and we go through a gigantic prison level.
The elves' magic is useless inside those enchanted cells.
Like, this map was huge, and a lot of fun to micro around. With the jailer taken care of, we portal out of here, and Vash has some villainous line about stepping closer to Kael's destiny. Obviously, she has something up her sleeve, but all I could think of was how Grand Marshal really screwed up all of this, with his blatant hate for everything but humans. We find ourselves in a familiar spot, Hellfire Peninsula. I absolutely adored leveling through here during Burning Crusade, and getting to see it through this lens was, spectacular. On the flip side, I couldn't imagine being an adult having played through all of the Warcrafts on release, then playing through WoW. If you watched my other videos, you know I love to call a world lived in. This trilogy plus the MMO has that exact feeling, and maybe someone that truly experienced that could share some things down below. I assume seeing the main villains for either Burning Crusade or Wrath would have evoked a lot of emotions. Anyways, we're introduced to the Outland, the former remains of Draenor, and get the backstory. In an attempt to escape, Nazul created a number of gateways, but all they did was split the entire planet apart. Vashj tells Kael that this is where Illidan has exiled himself, and they should find him quickly. We do, but he's in a pickle. Shadowsong is another badass character and actually has captured Illidan in some sort of crystal. We have to get him back to the base in this tug-of-war scenario, which had its ups and downs. I kind of enjoyed not being the one to supply troops, rather have this like MOBA setup with the unit waves coming in, and having two heroes made me feel like I was playing Dota again, but without all the rage. There were points where either side had way more units than the other one could possibly deal with, but if you utilized the mercenary stores, you'd have an easier time with it. It's a close call, but we rescue Illidan and break him free.
Lady Vashj, your rescue was most timely. The thought of spending another 10,000 years in Maev's prison was not a pleasant one.
Vashj tells Illidan of the Blood Elves, and we really do have the axis of evil forming. They're all kind of justified too in their own messed up ways. I wonder who is powerful enough to stop them. The next mission has us taking on Magtheridon, a brutal pit lord that has taken control of the Outland after its shattering. The Pit Lord is using dimensional portals to call in more demon reinforcements, and we need to plug that tap before we face him head on. Also, Magtheridon lives in the Black Citadel, and this is all starting to make more sense now. It's a brutal and bloody campaign, but we successfully break through the 3 demon gates and close them. We also meet a group of Draenei who are native to the Outland, and they help us in our cause to kill the Masters of Pain and Torment to get to Magtheridon. The level design here was awesome, and I love controlling 2 armies. Compared to last time, there was a great add-on of skill to when you had to command Thrall and Cairn. You also have a different resource system for gaining units, and it made it feel like a custom map for some reason, which was not a bad thing whatsoever. Another neat game mechanic is that the Naga can use water, making certain portions of the map only accessible to them. It makes conjoining the armies and figuring out the slight terrain puzzles engaging and creates specific differences between the armies that make them unique. We take on the 2 masters of whatever the hell goes on here, and I like the fact that everyone is some color of evil. It makes the choices seem a bit better. Defeating both masters unlocks Magtheridon, which sounds like a dinosaur's name, and we beat the ever-living shit out of him.
I have come to replace you. You're a relic, Magtheridon. A ghost of a past age. The future is mine. From this moment on, Outland and all of its denizens will bow to me.
Illidan takes out the Pit Lord and declares he is Lord and Master of this realm. Yeah, okay there, buddy. The next mission is called Kil'jaeden's Command, and we finally get to see who is pulling the major strings here.
Keep your head down, fool. Something terrible is drawing near.
Foolish little mongrel. You failed to destroy the frozen throne as I commanded. And still you thought to hide from me in this forsaken backwater.
Kil'jaeden is massive, and pissed off Illidan hasn't gone after the frozen throne yet, instead going into the Outland, killing off pit lords and the lot. With Kil'jaeden's warning, Vashj, Kael, and Illidan have formed the Super League of Villains, and thus ends that chapter in their campaign.
Where you go, we follow.
It's really odd this expansion was called the Frozen Throne, since only 20% deals with that exact subject, but I won't focus too much on that, since I was more worried about how our dear Prince Arthas was doing. The first cutscene has Sylvanas and Kel'Thuzad eavesdropping on the 3 Dreadlords, seemingly unaware that Archimonde has died at the World Tree. Arthas bursts onto the scene and tells them of the Legion's undoing, the Dreadlords teleport away, and the Undead team reunite. Arthas has completely gone Super Genocide Man, and this first mission is destroying refugee towns and humans fleeing into the mountains. This was a huge level, and controlling now 3 armies was a lot of work. We do a great job at murdering everyone, but a pain overcomes Arthas as a vision of the Lich King appears, telling him that Arthas must come back to Northrend to protect the Lich King at all costs.
Power is fading. Time is running out.
King Arthas, do you need assistance?
No. The pain is past, but my powers are diminished. Something is terribly wrong here.
With Arthas distracted by Papa Lich, Sylvanas joins the leaderless Dreadlords and explains to them that she no longer hears the Lich King's voice in her head. Why is this? Obviously, she is not happy about being turned into a peon of the Scourge and deliberates on whether she should try to attempt a coup. Meanwhile, Arthas has been having more seizures and tells Kel'Thuzad about losing his power, which is demonstrated through Arthas losing levels throughout the campaign. It's a great method of storytelling through gameplay and makes the missions even more difficult since you're losing damage each game. As frustrating as that is, since no player wants to do less damage progressively, it's these sort of constraints that make the game so worth playing. Before Arthas can get to the ships destined for Northrend, the Dreadlords make their move and unsuccessfully try to Caesar Arthas. It does not work.
Weakened as you are, we have assumed control over the majority of your warriors. It seems your reign was short-lived.
Arthas murders his way throughout the city, reaching the boats with a handful of loyal servants. We also see that Sylvanas isn't some Dumbo. She helps out Arthas and plays the long game, drawing Arthas in with protection, then laying her trap far away from any eyes.
She sent us to find you, great king. We've come to escort you across the river. Once we cross it, we'll take refuge in the wilderness.
I mean, Arthas deserves this tenfold.
What is happening here? Sylvanas.
You walked right into this one, Arthas. It's time to even the scales.
Tainted by Sylvanas' arrow, Arthas has the audacity to ask for a quick death. I literally cheered at Sylvanas' reply.
Finish me, then.
A quick death? Like the one you gave me? No. You're going to suffer as I did. Thanks to my arrow, you can't even run.
Unfortunately, Kel'Thuzad breaks up the coup and Arthas gets ready for his trip. Sylvanas has an existential crisis about still being undead but not being under the control of the Lich King. It's an interesting predicament she finds herself in. Even more so that she's greeted by another Dreadlord, Varimathras, who offers her a seat on some council. Sylvanas rejects him and the fight over the Plague Lands ensues. With the help of some allies, we obliterate Varimathras' forces and get him to work under us, even though Sylvanas doesn't truly trust him.
Sylvanas, spare my life, I beg you. I can be of service, I swear it.
Just like a demon, you'd sell your brethren out just to save your own skin. I'm listening.
We jump in time to 3 weeks later as Arthas lands on Northrend, and our task is to reach the Ice-Crowned Citadel as quickly as possible. Blood Elves almost instantly approach Arthas and declare war on the faction. Luckily, a friend comes out to help, Anu Barak, the Ancient King.
The Lich King sent me to aid you, Death Knight.
This guy is awesome, and a great hero. We wipe out the Blood Elf outpost and get an appearance from Kael himself, telling Arthas about Illidan's plans on marching on the Ice-Crowned Citadel and destroying the Lich King. Arthas is almost out of time, however, him and Anub must use the ancient tunnels underneath them as a direct shortcut, yet many evils lie within. There is an awesome optional opportunity in this level with a dragon named Sapphiron. If you defeat the smaller dragons, you'll summon him, who Arthas proceeds to then Game of Thrones and turn him into an undead dragon. That's certified badass.
We have a long road ahead of us.
We tear through the native wildlife and make it to the ancient tunnels, but before we continue on that front, we're teleported back to Sylvanas and Varimathras, plotting against his Dreadlord brother and preparing to take over the Plague Lands. We infiltrate the Dreadlord's base, and I guess he used some mind control or demonic presence on the humans here. You only have 7 minutes to pick and destroy the bases before everything comes online. Out of all the missions so far, this was fairly straightforward, especially with the undead siege weapons at full upgrades. They just didn't stand a chance.
The spell has been lifted. Is the nightmare finally over?
Oh shit, was Grand Marshal Garithos under the Legion's control this whole entire time? Was it their doing that they had Kael forgo the Alliance and choose Illidan? That's major if so. With the Grand Marshal freed from Dreadlord control, Sylvanas offers him his Lordaeron back if he helps her kill the Dreadlord, which sounds too good to be true, and it is.
Come now, you have no intention of giving them their lands back.
Of course not. The humans are simply a means to an end.
Chapter 6 was a doozy. It took me, no joke, an hour to cut through these defenses, and almost every minute was painstakingly microed to almost no avail. This is Balnazar. All you had to know is that he had insane numbers and battle comprehension. We finally break through and put the Dreadlord on his knees. As I said before, Sylvanas is no joke and makes Varimathras kill his own Dreadlord brother, which I guess is morally wrong for them. She plays it off as a loyalty test and has him kill Garithos as well.
I require one last test of your loyalty, Dreadlord. Do it.
You wouldn't dare.
There, your business is done. Now I want you wretched animals out of my city before I...
Kill him, too.
Gladly.
The capital city is ours, but we are no longer part of the Scourge. From here on out, we shall be known as the Forsaken.
So this is how the Forsaken gets created? Very cool, very cool. Back to Arthas and company in the tunnel. They happened on dwarves, and not just any dwarves. Mirrodin's dwarves, the leader who Arthas killed to the sword and stone Frostmourne. The next level is kind of silly. It has you blowing up powder kegs throughout the level with dwarves haphazardly standing right by them. I don't know, out of all the crazy stuff we've witnessed these last hours, this felt a little bit arcadey. We make our way further into the tunnels, and a noob tells us that something scared the dwarves away from these interior tunnel systems and is probably lurking somewhere. It's a neat detail since it makes the player think about what else could be hiding in the fog of war. And oh boy, was there something here. We encounter a Forgotten One, which I guess Blizzard retconned, but that's for a different day. I like the design of it, and we take it down. Up next were some weird puzzles that felt a bit tacked on. I don't know, these levels made me lose steam a little bit, especially after how good the pacing has been throughout this whole entire game. We emerge out of the tunnels, meeting up with our armies, but Arthas again is plagued by seizures or whatever power drain is happening to him.
Greetings, King Arthas. You've arrived just in time. Illidan's Naga and Blood Elf forces have taken up positions at the base of the glacier and...
Arthas, my champion. You have come at last.
The Lich King explains there's an actual leak in his throne, and that's why Arthas's powers have diminished. What, there isn't a super that can patch that up for you, Lich King? What's your rent in the ICC? Anyways, the Lich King informs Arthas of Kil'jaeden, the creator of the Lich King, so that shows off how frickin' powerful Kil'jaeden is. And the next level has us on a race to capture obelisks against Illidan and his team. I enjoyed this mechanic a bit more than just holding out, thank God, and after some really fun back and forth, we get each obelisk under our control. Arthas and Illidan confront each other, and both are in between a rock and a hard place. Illidan under Kil'jaeden's watchful eye, and Arthas literally becoming limp from a leak in his master's throne, without which he is nothing and his atrocities mean zilch. But one has to be victorious and an epic duel starts. Wait, I was not expecting Illidan to go down like that. Does Kil'jaeden resurrect him? What's the lore? But we can rejoice in reuniting of Arthas and the Lich King. Not only is the visual awe-inspiring, but hearing the dialogue of Arthas' growth and subsequent fall from grace is haunting.
You are not my king yet. Forget this business. Lead your men home. Even if you were. Damn it. As your future king, I order you. You lost your mind, Arthas.
To know this is just the beginning of his chaos. With the final command, Arthas frees the Lich King from his throne, adorns the helm, and takes his spot on the frozen throne. Wow, now that's a freaking ending. So many stories came to satisfying conclusions, and so many of those conclusions will have satisfying beginnings. There's so much to this universe, this game, this world, that I cannot express how rewarding it was to play through the whole game with the context that I've had previously, and through the analytical lens of the storytelling, visualization, audio, and of course gameplay now. WarCraft 3's campaign is a must-play for any person interested in RTS games, plus the importance of the story and its implications in the bigger lore of the franchise. It's just a great discovery if you happen to have missed out on the game previously. I find it highly ironic and a bit lucky that Reforged didn't do anything major to change the game or how it plays. Sometimes that has downsides, like unit pathing or the occasional voice line that sounds like they were made on the street with some random child. But overall, I was happy with what was here at this point. I only wish this game the best, and I know Blizzard screwed people on launch, and even what we have now is not what they promised. But what was there in 2002 is still there today, and it holds the line beautifully. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. It was truly a pleasure to work on this, and I look forward to the next time. Let me know which campaign was your favorite, which heroes you used to covet or still do, and whether you'd like to see another RTS in this universe again, something I don't see talked about enough. And as always, talk to you next time.